Surf's up, bruh, because we are continuing our California week on Political Playlist. Stay tuned for a young member Wait, let me redo this.
Wait, that was so good. We're using this. We're not cutting a thing.
No, let me
Guys,
start
that
over.
was Anna winging a cold open. Here we go.
Welcome to Political Playlist.
All right, are we ready, guys?
Happy hour.
Happy hour.
We fucked that up so bad.
Hey, everybody, and welcome
Wait,
to Political
really?
Playlist Happy Hour. I'm Michael Kristoff.
Man, I must get Goldwyn. Are you actually going to use
that was Anna's stab at improv there. That was so good.
We didn't even get to our tagline, which is pour
What
a
was the
drink because
tagline?
pour a drink because we're bringing you into our group chat about politics and the next generation of leaders in our country. This is Political Playlist Happy Hour.
That was so. Do you want to do what your clean cold open would have been? Just for our listeners so they can hear it?
I don't know what it would have been because it was improvised.
Well, speaking of Cali bro vibes, how do you feel about moving from Venice and Mar Vista, respectively,
Respectively.
Also but respectfully, we will move.
Respectfully move.
Yeah. How do you feel about moving up to California's 32nd congressional district, which is just one town north of us, so that we can maybe vote in a primary for the guy we're going to talk to in a minute?
I mean, I feel good about it because there's some pretty great places to live up there.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure I can afford them, but
totally. But I
Yeah.
also feel good about it because today's conversation is super exciting. And we're talking to a young man named Jake Levine, who is running in California's 32nd congressional district, which is currently represented by Congressman Brad Sherman, who, as you will mention in this interview, has been in Congress since 1997.
wow.
Dear listener, you might not have even been born in 1997.
Anna, do you remember what you were doing in 1997?
I do. I was in second grade.
Wow.
I can tell you that I probably had like a size 8 foot. And I was in Miss Corman's class at West School, and we did a family history project, and my sister was 2 years old. You
Oh,
asked.
I'm so sorry. Oh God. It's just that time of day where I like to nap.
Anyway,
Well,
on
that's
to more,
exciting.
on
So
to
we
more.
are talking with Jake Levine.
I said that already.
You did. Okay. Okay, great. Tell us about Jake Levine.
Yeah, so he is 42 years old. He previously has served in a lot of climate and energy positions in both the Obama and Biden White House. He then has gone on to, as he describes early in this episode, found a number of both local and city organizations that have even gone national to help people, things for like disaster relief, things like helping with some of the ice raids that were happening here in Los Angeles. He's a very grassroots kind of guy, which I think we're seeing as sort of a trend amongst a lot of these young people running. And Jake is also a 4th generation Angelino. So he means business when he is running for this seat to try to preserve the city that he loves and improve the city that he loves.
I feel like when you highlight the fact that he has sort of been an organizer, particularly in his community, particularly in the wake of the Palisades fire, which we'll talk about, he was directly affected with that. I'm struck by this memory of back in 2008 when Barack Obama was running for president, and he was, dubbed a community organizer, and it was like that was labeled as some sort of terrible thing, right? And it was like, oh, he has no experience. He's just a community organizer. And I think to myself, like, my God, when we look at Congress right now and how seemingly ineffective they are on so many things, what I wouldn't give for 435 community fucking organizers in that group to actually do some shit. So I'm very excited to hear about just the different things that he has been involved in and continues to do. And as the T-shirt says,
elect young people.
We like to elect young people. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Jake Levine. Well, Jake Levine, welcome to Political Playlist Happy Hour. How's it going?
It's going better now that I'm with you guys. Thank you.
Aw.
Great.
Wow,
Well,
perfect guest.
this is fun because you are basically our neighbor. You are running for Congress in California's 32nd congressional district. We're down here in Venice, so you're just kind of one district up in
Yep.
Malibu, Palisades, Hollywood Hills. For those
Val.
who know LA, all the way up to Chatsworth. So it's you have a pretty big encompassing district, but obviously this is selfishly, this is fun to get to talk to you because you're going to be basically, hopefully, maybe our kind of congressman,
Neighboring
we're
congressman.
neighboring congressman. So we feel like we'll call you ours, adopted. Yeah.
Congressman adjacent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
We've got to take what we can get.
Yeah. Well, you are running against a guy to sort of dive right in here who has been in Congress since Bill Clinton was president, which is to say 1997, and that's a very long time ago. So
Yeah.
what is motivating you to run against Congressman Brad Sherman?
Well, I mean, you kind of just encapsulated it in that intro, but the reality is that 30 years is long enough, and we are facing really urgent challenges in this community across this country, as you know, and we cannot wait any longer for the change that we need. I'm a third generation Angelino. I grew up here. I'm raising my family here. I got into this race after losing my childhood home in the fires last year and seeing the complete lack of not only preparedness, but readiness to then recover from that devastating disaster that destroyed 7,000 structures in Malibu and the Palisades, another 6,000 or 7,000 in Altadena. And look, I didn't wait for someone in Congress to come to our rescue. In fact, that never happened, but I immediately started organizing with community. I helped launch a nonprofit called the Department of Angels, which has brought aid to fire survivors across the district. And that is community doing a lot of the work that, frankly, government, we should be able to rely on our government to do, but it has lost the muscle memory for how to do that. When ICE started kidnapping our neighbors, terrorizing the community members who keep our economy moving, I didn't wait for government to come and solve the problem. I grabbed a walkie-talkie. I joined patrols in a Home Depot parking lot. When I learned, by the way, that Home Depot sits on LA City property, I wrote a petition. We've gotten hundreds of signatures asking the city, demanding that the city prohibit any further lease of that property to Home Depot until Home Depot agrees to stop unlawful, unconstitutional conduct on its property. When the pandemic forced young people indoors, I helped launch what is now the largest state-level service corps in the country. It's called the California Climate Action Corps. It's put 20,000 young people to work, and it's creating on-ramps into civic engagement and into the workforce for those folks. And we are facing enormous challenges. No one can buy a home. Young parents can't afford childcare. People are still paying off into their 40s thousands of dollars a month of student loan debt. And now, because we've got this war that appears to have moved us backwards in terms of our geopolitical position in the world, and by the way, one which my opponent, Brad Sherman, has been defending, we can't afford our gas and we can't afford our groceries, and our federal budget is in peril. So the fundamental reason why I'm doing this is because we cannot wait any longer for change, and we need a new generation to come in with the experience, lived experience, and with the ability to get things done and build coalitions.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing you kind of, first of all, a very impressive organizational resume of all those groups. And thank you for doing that for our collective community.
Yeah.
But in hearing you talk about that, you are it seems you're coming at this from a real organizer's perspective and someone who is kind of, building from the grassroots up. And I think that's something that's always very impressive about young people who are running, especially in this day and age, is that it really does seem to be born out of some kind of like lived experience that the organizations started then that act towards service. And I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about like what you feel is unique, both in a great way, but also maybe in a challenging way about being a young person in America running for office at this time when politics seems to be, slightly out of control, to put it bluntly.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, look, I'm 42 years old, so I'll just, sometimes
You're
I feel
young.
old when
You're
I say
young.
it. But I feel really lucky because when I was graduating college, the year 2007, I went to go hear a guy named Barack Obama give a speech in the March of my senior year in Boston. I completely fell in love, was inspired by his message and his movement, and decided to drop what I was going to be doing and volunteer for his campaign. I traveled across the country, 25 states, helped elect Barack Obama, and then went into the White House in what became the first ever climate policy office. And that was the
Wow.
tail end of my sort of, adolescence into adulthood. And I look now at young people, people who were born in the 90s, people in Gen Z, and what they have seen in the way of what's happening in the world and how our government responds to it is they've seen 9/11, they've seen a great recession, they've seen Trump won, they've seen COVID. Um, that just that alone, and the mental health, implications of that for the way that we all got forced onto Zoom and isolated. Then they got Trump 2.0. They have never seen a government that has delivered, that has inspired, that has compelled people to become a part of it, that has shown people that actually change is something that we all have a responsibility for, and that then it becomes possible. So I feel so lucky to have come up in that, just catching that Obama wave at the end of my time when I felt like I could have been interested in it, and then seeing the change that we created. I mean, we invested $100 billion in climate solutions in the first administration. We got a healthcare bill done. We got financial regulatory reform. There were things that we saw, and there were previous generations who've seen that too, whether it was stopping the Vietnam War, doing the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act. And today, our young people need a new model for how to create change. And as you said it very beautifully at the beginning, it always starts in the community. It is something that is local. It grows block by block, but it has to start with people. And I feel like I'm right in that bridge between these generations where I'm an elder millennial. I've gotten some things done in my career, and I want to be a bridge to the next generation and to the one after that. Just by way of, sorry, wrapping up because it's a long response, but I have a 1-year-old baby, and his chance in life of doing better than myself or his mom is only 50% today, which is unprecedented in the United States. In our parents' generation, they had a 90% chance of doing better than their parents. And so we're seeing this cliff of opportunity that to me is unacceptable. And that is what motivates me to get together with community and try to build and imagine something better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way now about kind of doing better than their parents. So
yeah,
it's a stressor.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you were personally affected by the fires. You said you lost your childhood home. I think a lot of us on the West Side and even in LA were new people who lost their homes, and my heart breaks for you guys. And I'm curious, that experience obviously was a roller coaster of emotions, to say the least. But what did it tell you about government, or maybe the lack thereof that was missing, that you really experienced with that horrific event?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it has been a roller coaster. It continues to be. This was my mom's house. She actually just a few weeks ago moved into the place where she thinks she will be for the foreseeable future. She's 75 years old. It's not clear if she'll rebuild. There's not a week that goes by that I'm not dealing with her insurer and fighting for her property contents, her loss of use, other claims that she's paid for. By the way, we're in a system now where our incumbent member of Congress, Brad Sherman, has been accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars of campaign contributions from the insurance companies that are kicking people off of coverage, that are denying claims.
Wow.
And so you wonder about, well, why is it so difficult? Part of it is that we're in a system that is by design captured by these industries. And that's one major problem, where we have government that has been captured by corporate interests. People in Altadena, of course, are going to have to contend with SoCal Edison, which appears to have very plausibly been the proximate cause of that fire. And they're going to be dealing with a system where a major corporation that's paying campaign contributions and entrenched in our government is much better positioned to advocate for themselves than the people are. But the other thing that I saw a lot of was a lack of responsiveness and a lack of coordination. I served, I mentioned, in the first Obama White House, and we were there during the BP oil spill. And one of the things that we provided was multi-jurisdictional coordination to respond to that disaster, to deal with the local parishes, to deal with the state, to deal with the federal agencies. There was never any, with the one exception of the U.S. Army Corps when they came in at the very beginning and provided that, there has not been a sustained level of coordination. This is something that is ideal for a member of Congress to be providing in our multi-jurisdictional backyard, which includes the city of LA, the county of LA, the state of California, and the federal government. And what that resulted in was we didn't get the usual resources in the way of soil confirmation testing, housing assistance, rental assistance. To this day, we still don't have a plan to finance the billions of dollars of infrastructure upgrades that we're going to need, not only to make fires and disasters like this less likely, but to actually respond when they do occur. And so, I think there's a massive gap in coordination and planning. And then the last thing that I'll say is, I think our government has lost a certain almost empathy or ability to just sit there as we're dealing with this new normal that we're in with the people who are going through it. And part of that is a atrophying of our public institutions and our inability to be responsive day to day. But when you are somebody who's dealing with LADWP, building and permits, your insurance company, your family grief, it's a full-time job. And you need support from your government, including someone who can be there to listen to what you're going through. And I haven't seen that coming from our representative, and it's something that I think is really sorely lacking.
Well, to kind of to just sort of follow up on that, I mean, you mentioned a little bit with the insurance, the sort of ties to insurance companies. If you win the primary, if you win the general election and you're in this position, hopefully we will never see something as disastrous as these fires caused. But, inevitably you're in fire territory in that district. Not to mention the earthquake, any other disaster that can kind of come up. Can you talk a little bit about like your specific vision? I mean, the empathy part seems to be a really big piece of it, but as a congressman, like what would be on day one your intention of like, how can I be the bridge between the federal government, the state government, the city government, all of that to really help people as someone who's actually been in the situation yourself?
Yeah, well, I would say there are two like core areas that require immediate intervention, among others, because this is really a layered and complex situation, and there are parts of different communities. If you're recovering in the Tahitian Terrace, which was a mobile home park, an affordable community in the Palisades, your recovery looks a whole lot different from someone who was a homeowner in the Highlands or a renter in the Village. And I want to be thoughtful about how different those experiences is, and also that underscores the need to be in the community and listening and understanding what's going on. But at a high level, there are two areas, insurance and federal funding, that are really badly behind. And we have proposals in both areas. Number one, on insurance, the state has really screwed up its insurance system. We see that with insurers leaving the state, refusing to provide coverage, and we also see it with prices skyrocketing, and insurance commission that has been either unwilling or unable to think of creative and common sense ways to bring down premiums. One example that is just funny, that it's not that funny if you think about it, but I mentioned my mother's home. On her insurance coverage, she had a wildfire risk assessment conducted by the insurance company the year before the fire, and they assessed her home at a 0 out of 30 risk.
Oh my God!
Now, premiums are a reflection of risk,
Right?
So maybe her premium should have been higher, but what clearly they did not understand the risks.
Yeah.
And one of the proposals that we have is requiring insurance companies to allow homeowners to reduce their premiums when they mitigate risk and use technology and data to do that. When people are rebuilding, they're doing it with resilience. They're using fire-safe materials. They're using strategies in home hardening, in defensible space. There will emerge a community resilience that should result in lower premiums for people. But right now, what we're seeing is the opposite, where out of a fear of future fires, premiums are up 5-6x. That's one. Number two, when insurance companies don't respond to people, people deserve a federal channel to register their complaints and their concerns. And so we're proposing a federal claims advocacy center that can provide additional oversight and pressure on the state and the insurance industry to do that. That's insurance. And then the second thing is, we saw that Governor Newsom proposed $40 billion of infrastructure and relief. That needs to be a whole lot more granular and specific, and we need to advocate for those specific needs one at a time in Congress. I will not rest until we have those resources, whether it is for undergrounding of the electric lines to prevent the kind of risks that we saw in the Eaton fire, or whether it is to provide renters and homeowners assistance to people who have been displaced and still have not been able to return. And I will say, I listened to my opponent, Brad Sherman, at one point say, there's not much that I can do while Republicans control Congress. And that just made my blood boil. Think about the natural disasters that Republicans across the country are dealing with in North Carolina, in Florida, in Texas.
Right. If there's ever a bipartisan issue, 100%. It is this.
And meanwhile, it's the Trump administration that's blowing up FEMA. And this requires building relationships. It requires building coalitions. That is not something that he has demonstrated an ability to do. That's something I've done my whole career. And so bringing those coalitions to bear on actually providing the relief that people still haven't gotten years on, whether it's the Texas floods, North Carolina floods, or the California fires, is something that would be a first order of business for me.
Yeah, my husband, my father-in-law, has a little house in north of Tampa in Florida, and his house was completely destroyed by the floods. I guess it was like a year and a half ago now, and by the hurricanes there. And the lack of coordination, even in that, seeing it in a completely different government environment in Florida and a different type of natural disaster. But I think that specifically the thing you're saying about the ability to have, a claims assistance and stuff like that. I mean, he didn't even have insurance because you can't even buy insurance there, which is also insane. Wow. But it's just I think that idea of building relationships when there are these issues that are so clearly affecting all types of people, all types of communities, we need people in Congress who aren't afraid to have those conversations, because you're not going to agree on everything, but surely people can understand that their communities need some sort of government coordination when it comes to these disasters that are becoming more and more inevitable.
Yeah. And actually, one other thing about that, just because, you earlier mentioned, well, what is it about being a young person? And I think that for those of us who have grown up in our generations, we're just more interested in results than in politics. And what I see so often with these members of Congress who've been there for literally 2 or 3 decades is they've kind of regressed to this hyper partisan mindset that exists in Washington. And so this idea that you would say, well, so long as Republicans are in control, there's nothing we can do. I mean, that just seems crazy to me. I am sure that I could find Republicans with whom I would agree on a whole host of things, whether it's disaster aid or housing, policy and innovation. It doesn't mean that we have to vote the same way on everything, but we've just got to be able to build relationships and bridges with people in the other party so that we can get things done.
I couldn't agree more.
You mentioned housing just now, and we've touched on this a little bit. This seems to be a major issue in our area, particularly exacerbated by these fires, but I think a broader issue across the state, across the country, the ability to afford adequate housing.
Mm-hmm.
You have proposed some potential legislation for this. Can you talk a little bit about that and just how you look at this issue and what I guess it's such a big issue. How do you begin to solve this?
Yeah. Well, it's such a big issue, and it's also such a fundamental issue because it's sort of the starting place for so much of life. You think about the anchors that you have in the world, and whether that's family or work, having a place to live is an anchor. And if you look at the sweep of time, we've been moving in the wrong direction, which is to say that this is a country that incentivizes home ownership. We do that in our tax code. I think there's some good public policy reasons for that. But in 1960, the average age of a first-time homebuyer was 23 years old. So you're graduating college. In those days, maybe you're starting a family in your 20s, and you have that anchor and stability. Today, it's 40 years old. And that's a reflection of the way in which we've seen a crunch in our supply and a rise in our prices no longer accessible for people. So the way we're thinking about this as from a policy perspective is from both the supply side and the demand side. Fundamentally, the pricing challenge is a function of a supply crunch. We have to build more, and we have to specifically build more affordable housing. There are some programs that we should be supporting more, whether that's LIHTC and some of the state level programs to incentivize affordable housing. But we also need to provide financing for folks who are involved in that work and unleash the scale and the power of the private sector to do that. So we've proposed a National Housing Development Bank that would provide low cost and flexible finance that would be a replacement to some existing programs that are around in the FHA, but that are too onerous and burdensome for people to really make good use of. This is something that I did in the federal government in a different context at the Development Finance Corporation. And with only a very small amount of federal appropriations, we leveraged the balance sheet of the U.S. Treasury to provide billions of dollars of loans in clean energy infrastructure, in housing, in ag. And we want to focus this on housing domestically. That's one. Number two, on the demand side, we should be supporting first-time homebuyers, and we want to do that by providing a mechanism to provide down payment assistance. There's some creative ways that we've seen states doing this, including some in California, and we want a concerted federal effort on it. And number two, we should provide renters, because now we have this enormous rent burden. In my district, probably 70% of renters are burdened by their rent, meaning they're paying more than percent of their income on rent. We want to provide a national renters tax credit so that people can start saving for home ownership with tax relief that can ultimately go towards a down payment. Now, all of this is going to take time, additional innovation. One thing that we're seeing in the Palisades, Michael, is the use of prefab and modular technology that has dramatically brought down the price per square foot to rebuild a home of incredible quality. And that's something that the federal government can be incentivizing and pooling resources to deliver as well. But the focus that we have initially is a National Housing Development Bank and support for down payment for people to get to that point where they can make a down payment on their first home.
And do you think those resources for that financially are just coming from being more responsible about spending? I mean, obviously you're not there yet, that you don't know, but I'm curious because I feel like that's always the question.
I'm sorry, I'm having this visceral reaction because we just heard our president say, "Oh, we can't provide childcare and we can't do education, we can't do housing because we have to prosecute a war." that
Right.
it costs us over $1 billion a day, and for which I need another $200 billion for putting all the grift of the Trump family to the side that is going to occur through that appropriation. This country has a sickness in terms of the way it prioritizes its budget.
Mm.
And the US Congress is going to entertain a budget with $1.5 trillion for additional military spending when we desperately need funding for housing domestically. That's a priorities problem. And this is another area where I believe young people can come together as a cohort and demand something. People often ask me, like, why are you doing this? Like, Congress sucks. And I say, well, it's like inspiring to me to see how many young people are doing it. And
Mm-hmm.
we're aligned in the things that we care about and that we feel are important. And I actually am hopeful that when enough of us can get elected, that we can shift those priorities and bring federal resources to bear on this problem.
Great. I love a great, perfect
Yeah.
answer to a slightly dumb question. I want to pivot a little bit. You've mentioned a few times your work in climate and energy in the White House and elsewhere. And, speaking of the current administration, we're in a time when I imagine the administration is rolling back a lot of the work that
Yeah.
you had put in the past, which I'm sure is personally disconcerting, but hopefully kind of motivating. And I'm wondering on that specific issue, because you've worked so much in it, how does climate and sort of renewable energy and fixing sort of whatever energy crisis you feel we're in right now, how does that play into your run for Congress amongst all these other issues that we've mentioned?
Well, I actually see it as pretty central to the work that we're doing to try to bring costs down.
Mm.
Because not only are we starting to see the way that climate change is driving costs up for people in terms of skyrocketing insurance, displacement, infrastructure requirements that we need, especially in our coast, 23 miles of coastline that often has to be rehabilitated, the Pacific Coast Highway, increasingly prone to flooding. But if you actually address this problem, you can bring down costs. One of the things that I worked on in my career was helping grow a startup, a tech company. It was a company called O-Power that used energy efficiency and behavioral science to get people to use electricity at the right times of day.
Mm.
And over the life of this technology, we have saved people billions of dollars on their electric bills
Wow.
because they can use electricity when it's most efficient and cheapest. We also know, if you just look at the market for new energy, over 90% of new generation of electricity comes just on the natural from wind, solar, and batteries. And the reason why that is because it's the cheapest, most resilient, most reliable form of energy available today. So government in some ways just has to get out of the way and let the market do its thing. I think that includes some degree of permitting reform and streamlining and accelerating of building. We see in other countries around the world, it's much easier to build the clean energy transition than it is in the United States, which we, by the way, invented it, but we've constrained our ability to get it done, not only because of people like Donald Trump that are arbitrarily and like insanely going after wind turbines,
Mm-hmm.
but because we can get in our own way on permitting and regulation. But this is the single greatest economic opportunity that we have of our generation. It represents $23 trillion of economic growth. And there's huge opportunities for additional innovation right here in our district with startup companies working on rooftop solar, on new batteries, on fast charging for EVs. There's manufacturing benefits to this. We've seen new manufacturing for electric vehicles, for electric planes, for the software and innovation that goes into the optimization of all of that. Pretty quickly, you can see that I'll nerd out on this, but
I love it.
big
Yeah.
opportunity. The thing I will just say, because you mentioned it, we do
Yeah.
have to reverse some of the most egregious rollbacks that we've seen in this administration. They got rid of something called the endangerment finding, which is basically the regulatory bedrock that we have to deal with climate change in the Clean Air Act. They just threw it out, and it's contrary to law. Actually, the Supreme Court has required this in a case called Massachusetts versus EPA in 2007. We have to marry the economic opportunity with common sense regulations that can allow people to innovate And this administration has thrown a wrench in that gear, and we need to undo it.
So let's say Democrats take back the House, they have the congressional power.
Yeah.
Where do you start with this? What can Congress in the next session actually do to start to repair some of these things that have been undone?
It's such a great question, and actually, it's a great opportunity for us in Congress. We need to come in. There's only a handful of members of Congress who really can hit the ground running on this, which is and I've been campaigning on this because I think it's really important to people. We need to immediately draft legislation in 2027 that can go onto a President, Buttigieg's desk in 2029. And what that needs to do is, first of all, it needs to clarify and undo the reversal of the endangerment finding, as I mentioned. It needs to enshrine something called the California waiver, which has allowed California, recognizing our own unique challenges with smog and pollution that we've had since the 1950s and 60s. It allows California to set independent standards for clean air from motor vehicles. That was something as a bipartisan bedrock of American law for 50 years. Trump administration canceled it. But we also can do things like incentivize utility companies to more efficiently deploy electricity. That will bring more renewables into the system. We can do things like requiring any new AI power, that has to be clean energy. I don't want to see any gas or coal-powered data centers being built in any of our lifetimes. It is ridiculous. It is not only draining our country of electricity and water, it's skyrocketing costs for consumers, and we shouldn't allow it, and we should legislate that. And, I think that there's a whole host of things that we can be doing on wildfire that dovetail with these goals to provide the kinds of resources to actually equip communities to deal with a new normal in climate, kind of along the lines that we were discussing.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, to begin to wrap things up, we want to get your opinion on something.
Okay.
So we released 2 episodes a week, and earlier this week, we dove into what is the very wild California governor's race, which is shaping up to be a shit show for Democrats. And I know this isn't your race. It's not a federal jurisdiction, whatever, but as an informed California Democrat, can you just talk about, it doesn't have to be like a pitch or anything, but what are I think we have a lot of listeners in California who are feeling a certain type of way about what's going on. What are the conversations you're having with your friends and your family and maybe potential constituents just about, this is the 5th largest economy in the world, and the governor's race is really, seems to be stifling for a lot of people. So what are you telling to people just in your casual conversations so people might have some guidance from someone who's a smart Californian to think about?
Well, I stipulate to everything that you said at the beginning, and agree. But look, for me, this resonates a lot with me because it speaks to the same reasons why I got into this race, that people are sick of politics as usual. They're sick of the performance. They're sick of the partisanship, and they want to see change. They want to see real people who are dealing with real problems. We're seeing this in the mayoral race too, where we've got politician after politician, and we want to see actual change for working families. And I think that the people who are going to succeed in these elections are going to be the ones who are able to clearly distinguish themselves because of what they're doing, right? To help working families, what their record has actually been. And I hope that in the case of the governor's race, that we can lift out of this sort of specter of top 2 Republicans ending up in first place. I think that Trump's endorsement of one helps in that regard. But, ultimately, we need the candidates to speak to the concerns that people are really feeling and to show themselves capable of doing that because they've lived through them.
Yeah. Taking out politics as usual, maybe a little bit.
Well, we're gonna end here with just a quick lightning round.
Okay.
This is a very no pressure. First thing that comes to mind top of your head here, what is a hidden gem of your district, whether it's a restaurant or a bar or a store you like, or
A park.
Well,
park? Could be a park.
yeah, I mean, there's all of the above. The best surf spot in the world is Third Point at Malibu. A little
Agree.
crowded on the weekends, but
Yeah.
that's not a hidden gem. I would say the hidden version of that, you have to go a little bit further up the coast towards Ventura and get up to Leo Carrillo. By the way, the Lobster Shack up there, can't miss that.
There we go.
Little
That's
surf
perfect.
lobster sesh.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Let's say you win the upcoming primary. Who's your first phone call? Who do you call?
Oh,
assuming your wife is there.
Assuming your wife
is
is
my wife
yeah. Yeah. Hopefully she's watching the numbers come in with you.
I mean, this is corny, but I'm a Jewish boy, so I'll stay true to that. I mean, I would call my mom. My mom is a person who really modeled public service for me in my life. She was a juvenile court judge, delinquency and dependency when I was growing up, and showed me by doing that service what it meant to do public service. And she might not be watching with me, so I would call her.
Cool. Is there a podcast or book that is shaping your thinking at the moment?
I'm reading a novel right now called Black Dog of Fate that tells the story of a boy growing up in an Armenian community, and it's really a cultural sort of history of really what it means to be part of the Armenian diaspora here, and it's really beautifully written and really wonderful story, and hugely important part of our story in California's 32nd, and of course an ongoing issue in the world, in that part of the world. So that's what's on my bedside table right now, in addition to a bunch of children's books, as we try to decipher.
Those are also very important.
What does it actually mean when something comes out of our kid's mouth?
That's great. What's your go-to pump-up song?
Oh man, this is so corny because, as my wife can attest, I'm just like a full basic music listener, and it's either like T Swift or like some 80s listening. But lately I've been insisting that my campaign, anytime we're advertising are walking on Instagram, and we've got like 50 volunteers coming out over the weekend, I insist that the audio be this like techno version of Following the Sun, because it is so good, and I get hyped and I want to like immediately go for a run.
We love a
That's
remix.
Great.
We love a remix.
Term limits. Are you a fan of term limits? Are you in favor of them?
Pro, but I want to qualify that just to say, I worked in Sacramento for Fran Pavley in the last year of her term. They had 12-year term limits, and I saw the way that motivated a lot of action. She wanted to get stuff done, and I think it brings a bench of new leaders up behind it. 12 years, I'm not sure is the right amount of time, because you do want to be able to create institutional expertise and memory in the actual elected officials, and not just in the staff folks who are in charge of committee operations and offices. So I think it's important to have a conversation about what that actually means. But I also think after a certain period of time, people do, it's like Barack Obama said the other day, like you kind of age out of this business. And so, yeah, I'm in favor.
Well, you've been incredibly generous with your time here. Give us just a quick idea of what the rest of your day looks like as a guy running for Congress.
With a 1-year-old.
Yeah. So this district, you mentioned how vast and diverse it is. You left out one really important area, which is Simi Valley.
Oh, yes.
After Prop 50, Simi Valley came into this district. It's a wonderful vibrant community. The Democratic world there is also, I think, really kind of scrappy and boots on the ground. They are hosting a candidate forum tonight, 7
Cool.
p.m. The Simi Valley Dem Club, and so we're going to be there and with all the other candidates in the race. I'm going to do a little bit of prep for that. I'm also planning a climate policy roundtable for the week of April 20th. We're going to go up to San Francisco for SF Climate Week, where a lot of people descend into the Bay Area to talk climate policy. And we need to plan out a little bit of the substance of that agenda. So I have some time blocked on that. And then the last thing, and this is like, really in the weeds, but we have to look at our budget, and we have to look at our script for a video that we're shooting on Friday. And so I'm just going to force myself to sit at the computer and take a look at that.
I love it. All right. Well, we better let you get to it. That's a busy day. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell people where they can find you, socials, donate, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. This was really fun. Can we do it again, please?
Of course.
Yes. Everyone can find us. Instagram really, I feel like, has become our website for all intents and purposes. We're posting all that we do there. Jake Levine for the number 4 for Congress. We're also on TikTok and Facebook and YouTube. Same handle. Our website is Jake Levine for Congress, FOR for Congress. And at the website, if you want to volunteer, there's a button and you can click it. And honestly, the energy out on the doors is amazing. I'm trying to knock doors almost every day. We need more people. This is how we're going to compete against someone who's got $5 million in the bank. We are also raising money, and we've outraised Brad Sherman every quarter that we've been in the race without taking a dime corporate PAC donations, which speaks to the excitement that people are feeling. So if the spirit strikes and you want to throw a little bit of cash into the campaign, we definitely need it, and it's going towards a very lean operation, and I'm grateful for your consideration.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, good luck with the rest of your busy day, and we hope to talk to you soon, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna and Michael. This was awesome.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye.